Hi, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Nairobi Gold Rush podcast. I'm your host, Scott, and today we have a very exciting guest with us. We have Shaheen McLean, and he's a very exciting guy that's here in Nairobi. He's a tech leader. His company is MoPhones. I guess your title is the head of tech and data and all kinds of stuff at
All of those
MoPhones.
things, yeah.
Yeah.
Director of Tech and Data.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big title. So why don't we just start out? You just tell us a little bit about MoPhones and what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, so for MoPhones, we're doing our refurbished smartphones for Africa. The idea being that we, in the US and Europe, there's a lot of, about 40% of the market is refurbished phones. And in Africa, that doesn't seem to be the case. And we want to be the ones who can solve that problem by not just doing something of a circular economy, but also being able to have it more affordable and offering it on device financing.
Oh, that's pretty crazy. So, I always kind of wonder about these things when I go on to Amazon in the US or something, and I always have the option of getting like the regular phone versus the refurbished phone, or they call it renewed, maybe is another term that's used. It's all interchangeable. Is that
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
exactly that. So, Amazon back market, the guys in the UK as well, Grover, Everphone, etc. In Europe, sorry. These are the ones who, a refurbished phone is as good as a new phone,
Uh-huh.
and even better, better than new is one of our taglines
Yeah.
because it's got it's much cheaper. It's like 60 to 70% of the main phone
Right.
or the flagship phone.
Yeah, exactly. And I see that the phones have grown in such a way over the last few years that one that's 2 or 3 years older, it's got the same features essentially. They always joke about the iPhone, right?
Yeah,
Like what are you getting with the new iPhone? It's like the same one from three
exactly.
years ago, right?
And it's one size bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
We're paying for incremental size increases.
Right. So that's pretty awesome. And where do you guys source these phones from? Like, how's that?
Yeah, so it's from a number of suppliers
Yeah.
all over the world,
Yeah.
globally, and we bring them into Kenya. We've been experimenting as well with the circular economy and trying to do buybacks of local phones as well.
Hmm.
One thing I've got to sort of caveat there is we focus mostly on the premium models,
Right.
and so things that can access the digital economy, like your iPhone 13s,
Hmm.
14s,
Yeah.
or your Samsung Galaxy N series or S series.
Yeah. No, that's a pretty big market, I think. I mean, I definitely love something like that because I always have to go to the US when I get my phones. I'm from the US originally, so I travel back there, and every time I need a phone, I usually go there to get it because the
Yeah.
prices of a new phone here are quite prohibitive.
Yeah, and in
And
South Africa, where I'm from, and
yeah.
uh, in many global places, your device is usually attached to your cell phone contract,
Hmm.
your data or your voice contract. And
Yeah.
so in South Africa, example, you'll have a Vodafone or Vodacom
Hmm.
um, 1 year or 2 year contract where you're paying them monthly,
Yeah.
and you get the device as part of your package.
Right.
And in Africa, in West Africa, East Africa, where I've been, um, it's not the case,
Yeah.
right? And
Definitely
so
not happening
if
for sure.
guys are usually buying phones cash or saving up to buy the phone. In the cases of Incopa, they've done the Lipam Dogo Dogo, which
Hmm.
is paid over time. And for MoPhones, we're trying to take a certain segment of the market where that is not being served, which is the premium models.
Right. Because
You
in
have
Copa, do they usually focus on kind of the lower end devices, or maybe not lower end, but like the more affordable
the
ones?
more affordable
Yeah.
ones, and the ones that I think they produce themselves. Yeah, so
Hmm. Kind of so y'all are kind of coming in and feeling that need of kind of probably a mid-price phone where you want to get something that's high end, but you're okay getting like a couple years
exactly,
older. Yeah.
and so the market for us is taking, I think the total market that M-Corpa serves us right now is about 100,000 a month.
Yeah.
We're still a small part of that, but tackling a different segment. Those guys who need to access the digital economy, for example, your merchants, your small business guys who are doing social commerce, for example, um,
Yeah.
and need something a bit better than
Yeah.
the lower spec phones.
Yeah. Well, in the business I work in with the Safe Boda and motorcycle riders, that's one of the challenges we always deal with is they have the lowest quality
Yeah.
phones, and we're trying to solve issues like GPS accuracy and all this crazy stuff. And so it would be really awesome to have a way for drivers to access affordable, higher end devices that can make the experience for the user better. Because it really is a challenge that I deal with those really cheap phones all the time.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. But of course, the drivers they kind of struggle, to have the funds to even, they're definitely not getting the latest iPhone by any
Yeah.
means. Yeah.
With the user research we've done, we've discovered that it's all about the battery.
Yeah.
It's all about the battery size, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes with buying a refurbished phone, your expectation of buying an iPhone as an Uber driver,
Mhm.
iPhones notoriously do not have the battery
Yeah.
capacity of the Samsung A series example,
Yeah.
and that proves a real challenge that we deal with.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite interesting because I know my daughter went to university in the U.S. and we've been here in Africa for 12 years, and we're
Yeah.
used to like, okay, pay cash for your phone or don't have these contracts. And so she goes to the U.S. and all of a sudden she calls and says, "Oh, I've got an iPhone now. How did you get that?" Because we always have like the kind of medium level Samsung devices or something like that.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Oh, yeah, I got an iPhone, the latest one. How much is it costing?" "Oh, nothing. I just signed up for a contract." I used to have that back when I lived in the U.S., but I'd forgotten how easy it is to access these type of devices there.
Yeah.
So I guess it seems like you guys are really filling a real niche there.
Yeah, and we do take that for granted, right?
Yeah,
That incredible access that we have in semi-developed countries, or in
yeah,
your case,
yeah,
developed countries.
yeah,
In West Africa, we found we had the idea, a lot of the solar companies were trying putting their foot in the water with mobile phones,
uh-huh,
financing, and um, we were actually doing solar financing in West Africa.
yeah,
My co-founders.
hmm,
Oh, the co-founder, sorry, I'm not one.
yeah,
And we try to take that model as well and apply it to the Kenyan context,
mhm,
where um, Kenyan market is used to credit, having the Safaricoms, the M-Pesas, the Lipa Laters of the
yeah,
world. Um, Taking that integrated finance and embedding it in a device is something that we decided, okay, we're going to put our full energy into, rather than try and make it a part of a solar business, or try and make it a part of another you know another lender,
yeah.
for
You always
example.
wanted to specifically go after the phone market.
Exactly.
And explain how this works. Like, what happens if I go and let's say get an iPhone from you guys, and then I get like I don't know, 24-month payment schedule or something like that. How long's the payment schedule
Yeah, it's
usually?
usually 12 months.
Yeah. So,
And so there's sort of some market research we were able to do, and
mhm,
12 months seems to be like the most common
yeah,
loan
the
term,
sweet
for
spot. Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
sweet spot of credits lending. And with our quality checks that we get from our refurbishers, we're able to then put a 12-month warranty as well. So there's a
Okay.
nice sort of connection there,
Yeah.
where we can provide a warranty on the phone, and then provide the financing for it as well.
Yeah, sure. And so, like, if I were to get an iPhone in that situation, let's say, and then after 3 months I decide I'm not going to pay you guys,
Yeah.
is there any way for you guys to collect the money, or do you shut the phone off? Like, what
Yeah,
happens in that
so
case?
that's the great part, is we partner with a few device locking partners, who are either directly in the Android operating system, embedded in the Android operating system, or in the iPhone device management system as well,
Mhm.
iOS. And yeah, so when a customer is defaulting, we would then lock the phone, and we would only enable certain applications. For example, the phone dialer, our app, or the M-Pesa app in this
Yeah,
in this market.
yeah,
And the idea being that we enable customers to then pay us, and,
yeah.
be
You
able
don't
to get support.
sure.
Um,
Yeah, you don't want to shut
and
off the
that
payment app if they're trying.
No, absolutely not. And so what we do is, there's also a let me find my words here. Yeah, in the user journey, we have the beginning of the process, where there's a credit check. We find out the affordability of the customer,
Hmm.
and we do some intelligent um, data modeling to be able to spit out a score, right?
Uh-huh.
And that would determine what affordability that customer has, what risk profile they have, and we were able to, work out a payment plan that that customer can have. And so we're actually experimenting now with our pricing model where we had a 12-month, you could pay it monthly or paid weekly. We're trying to go a bit slightly more dynamic now where we can give customers a lot more flexibility in their loan plan.
Yeah.
And that then they can pay for sometimes, some of our clients have not so stable income, and they would get it, in 2 months or 3 months, especially with some of our influencer crowd.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And yeah, where I want to land with that is our locking integration is directly integrated with our payments module. And so with our payments module, our ability to change the loan term or the underwriting of that loan, we're then able to also give the customers a great experience around the locking, because it's not great to have your phone disabled.
Yeah.
And we do want to focus on giving the customers a great experience even when they've not been able to pay.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I mean, that way it's kind of the best of both worlds. You can brick the phone if you need to. You can still allow them to pay, and hopefully, the payments will come eventually if
Absolutely.
they want to use the
We
phone
actually
not to
have
brick.
quite a very, one of the industry leading collection rates at the moment.
Yeah.
And for a 2-year-old startup, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And how do you collect the credit scoring information? I mean, there's something proprietary, or is there a certain way you can source that data? Because that's something I've worked with companies trying to do, and it seems like it's always a challenge,
Yeah.
to find that kind of information.
Yeah. So the risk scoring model is a proprietary one.
Yeah.
The data sources that we get is not,
Yeah.
right? So we tap into the guys like TransUnion, and Safaricom as well for some data collection around the customer's payment behavior or their credit reference, their bureau score, and a few other inputs that determine the model.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I said one is based on the risk profile, the other part is based on the affordability check,
Yeah.
and that decides what the customers think. But to source the data, they're mostly third-party services.
Sure. Well, maybe you could tell our listeners about what does a director of tech kind of do for MoPhones? Because, it's like, I could imagine somebody sitting there opening the phones and fixing it, but I know that's not what you're doing, right? You're handling all this.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, but I'm sure you're handling like this stuff like the credit scoring and all those applications. Maybe you can explain like what types of things that your
Yeah, so
position
at
kind of involves.
MoPhones, we have sort of three branches of the tech function.
Yeah.
We have the product, which are our mobile apps that enable our sales force, and our user application as well for customers to interact with MoPhones. We have our data function, where that's mostly around the collections, the credit scoring, and our revenue data. And then the engineering function, which kind of ties the two together, is the
Yeah.
glue that manages all of that.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, maybe you need to see somebody's credit and then enable the phone and then handle their payment plans
Exactly.
and
And have a back office where our devices run through our quality checking software,
yeah.
and having logistics systems and ERPs and finance machines. So it's quite a large spectrum of the software space, or I guess the tech space. My a day in the life of Shaheen, I guess, is usually starting with a stand-up, as most product teams do. And we are currently scaling our platform. And so a lot of my day is spent in user research or stakeholder alignment sessions, and trying to, move people away from the no-code tool that we've been using into something that's going to be a lot more scalable. So there's a lot of product design that goes in there, user experience management, trying to get our SOPs controlled in a manner that is auditable. So across the spectrum, many hats.
That's a lot to take on for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complicated business because you're not only dealing with the hardware, you're dealing with the software, the data.
Exactly, and
and to grow that.
we have a multimodal business model as well, where we have an e-commerce side on our website. We have a agent model like the Mkopa guys,
Mhm.
and we've recently gone into some merchant shops as well.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Well, it's interesting because, when you talk about somebody who's a technical director, myself, I'm CTO, like a lot of times people get this picture of like this nerdy guy who's like, they say techie guys that are doing these things in the server room or something. And it's always surprising to see that people have these varied backgrounds and kind of more exciting and dynamic things happen in life. So
Yeah,
I take it you mentioned you come from South Africa.
yeah.
So tell us kind of about your journey. Like, how'd you get started in South Africa with tech? How'd you kind of get this passion to get into this industry?
Yeah, excellent question. I distinctly remember this. Like my first idea of tech was in the early 90s
Yeah.
when my you're old enough to remember this as well. My cousin got their first compact desktop pro.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, exactly. And we were playing Prince of Persia
Mhm.
and Flight
Yeah.
Simulator. And eventually, like as I then got my own machine, and I think my real sort of genesis moment came from playing Half-Life and StarCraft Brood Wars on my first 3D graphics card, which was like
Yeah.
a 8 megabyte
Yeah, exactly.
graphics card.
And getting into the addicted to those games that are just like those early ones were like, crazy, just hours
Absolutely,
upon hours of just
absolutely.
sitting in front of that thing for
And
sure.
my dream then changed from whatever it was in my childhood to now, oh, I want to be a game designer. I want to be a game developer.
Mm.
I want to build these things, these alternate worlds.
Right.
Um, and yeah, and that made me then go into pursuing a degree in CS or computer science.
Yeah.
While doing that, I discovered that, programming calculators and turtle games in Java was not my version of this, epic game designer dream.
Yeah. I guess
Uh,
South Africa didn't have a lot of big game studios at the time.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's where my real, I guess, origin story began was in my first technical job,
Uh-huh.
where I worked at an electronics company. Um, Specializing in spectrometry, so your sonar, radio, signaling devices.
Yeah.
And I had started as a desktop engineer, just doing desktop support for the software guys,
Yeah. Maybe turned it on and
and
off
then
again type of stuff. Yeah.
exactly. And I got interested in what they were doing, and I was lucky enough to have a cool mentor there who taught me C, and I taught myself Linux because I was able to, now build in C. And over the couple of years that I was there, um, I was tasked with this project of being able to fit not just our software program for sending sonar imagery, but also the Linux operating system. Back then, I think the smallest version of a Linux operating system was about 10 megabytes. Basically, I stripped the kernel,
Yeah.
cut the story short, but yeah, stripped the kernel, fit everything on, a 1 megabyte flash. That was the first version of
That was a
flash
big flash
memory
back then
before,
too. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's where I decided I didn't just want to do engineering and software engineering. I wanted to really now go into system design and architecture.
Yeah, exactly. I remember lots of days in front of the Unix machines back in, I did my degree in electrical engineering and have those small machines that you couldn't barely handle anything, but at the time it was like so amazing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I think that constraint-driven problem solving is something that really drives me.
Yeah, and it's very different for new guys coming into the industry. I think it'd be hard for them to understand like the type of problems when you're dealing with C, for instance, and having to look at all the challenges of memory management and things that
Exactly.
you just take for granted nowadays with
Yeah.
modern things that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of fueled your passion. And so how'd you kind of start growing your career? Because it seems like you've been quite traveled throughout the world and
Hmm.
or at least throughout Africa quite a bit, I'd say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely Africa. I've spent some time in Europe as well,
Yeah.
but mostly around Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, so early in my career, I worked for a few small to medium enterprises down in Cape Town and Johannesburg. And I guess where, doing general IT and then also doing systems design and architecture on the Unix platform as well. I think my real sort of travel break came from being in Merrill Lynch, investment banking firm, doing the trade plant networking and all of the Bloomberg terminals and
all that
getting
crazy stuff. Yeah,
into the stock exchange, etc. I really got into data, and that was like my next bugbear that I
that's
needed
kind
to
of passion.
solve, and I
Yeah,
really wanted to go. Okay, I've solved this Unix thing. Let me get my hands dirty in data. And so I guess my journey has been this sort of autodidactic thing of self-taught, sitting with people, figuring things out, talking to them about the problems they're trying to solve.
and I think that's important for your current role right now because, like you mentioned, your titles, like you're director of tech and data, and
Product and
you
yeah,
have all these things, and like you pick it up as you go along the
yeah,
way, right? I think that's
yeah,
what I noticed in my career as well. It's like you don't know anything about data, and then you get into a role like, oh, you need to build this data warehouse or do something like that, and
yeah.
I said, no, now I know how to do that, and then you keep adding on to your skill set, and it
And,
helps you.
and there's only so much
Yeah,
that academia can
yeah,
teach you, right?
right.
Real world experience counts for, I think, hundreds of times more than that.
Yeah,
And I think the tech usually is not the important bits, and this is something we can get to later, but
right.
it's all about, trying to solve a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, and so from that, I had exposure now to global teams. We were working with network engineers across Asia, Europe, Americas, and then obviously South Africa, because South Africa was the African link
Yeah, the hub of
in that
everything.
huge firm. From there, I moved now into having now this data experience. I put that out there, and I now wanted to go find someone that had some more data rich companies.
Yeah.
And I joined a startup in Cape Town for a sports betting business. And that got me exposed now into other areas in Africa, because we were a startup. We then acquired a few brands that were out in Nairobi first, and out in Lagos. Um, and from there, I was moving into various startups now, being somebody who can add value to casino, bingo, other
Yeah.
iGaming
Well, I guess with that
things.
data background, right, those guys, data is pretty critical because they want to be able to basically, I guess, kind of scam you out of your money in a way, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Data is
Um,
kind of critical there.
it's critical in two parts. One where, um, in terms of marketing and customer acquisition,
Yeah.
like these guys spend millions and millions of dollars on email campaigns and banner ads and things
Yeah.
that basically the things that we're trying to ad block now, and,
Yeah.
and we're getting pretty successful at.
Yeah.
But back then it was a wild west. It was
Hmm.
absolutely yeah,
Yeah.
million-dollar
Pop-ups all over
industry
your
of
screen, and
marketing, exactly.
yeah.
And so there was that data. The other data is then now on payment behavior, and I
Hmm.
think that's what really got me into it drew my interest into the fintech space, because now we were dealing with payment data, and like, what story can you tell about a person using
Yeah. You can,
just using their payment behavior?
yeah. So you could kind of like see how often they're going to be betting and try to then tailor the marketing campaigns to get them to bet just on the right games and everything
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly, and that took me into Europe. That we were partnered with a Dublin-based entity as well in the
Okay.
Isle of Man,
Yeah.
and there were quite a lot of travel that was happening over there. But I think my real sort of pivotal moment came where I had my daughter was about to be born,
Hmm.
and I this it's still it's still a quite a emotion wrenching
Uh-huh.
story to tell. But there was a moment where I imagined myself speaking with my daughter, and she asking me, "Daddy, what do you do at work?"
Yeah.
And at that moment, I was like, I really couldn't think of a good way to posit this gambling world that I was in. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was super. What's the word? It was super profitable,
Right.
and we were based, as you said, to your
Yeah.
point, stealing people's money.
Yeah.
but providing them this entertainment, and I just couldn't find a positive way of putting this. And that was a moment I decided,
Yeah,
what, I'm
done with
done with this
gambling.
world.
Yeah,
Let me go find something else. And
yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's something interesting for a lot of the young guys that are probably listening to us. I mean, I know when I first graduated from university and went out to the world, and I studied a lot of statistics and everything, and I thought, I can use all my math and I can do sports betting and like
yeah,
really game the system. I can make these systems to make it work and could do pretty good for a little while. And then you
yeah.
realize pretty quickly, like, no, there's no way that this can ever work in your favor.
There's
Like even the smartest
nothing.
guys out there, I mean, maybe some playing poker or something like that. There's some things that if you have a little skill, maybe you could do okay. But for the
Yeah.
most part, these type of sports betting, things like that, it's gamed against you no matter what,
Exactly.
right?
And the casinos hate when you want to play poker or
Yeah,
blackjack, because those are where the odds are
yeah.
you could actually,
You could count cards or something,
yeah,
right?
yeah, do some maths around it.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah,
then
no, those the slots with the page, the fancy graphics, and
mhm,
those are there to grab your attention.
yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, and it's a difficult business because I mean a lot of guys are spending all their money on sports betting. I think that happens a lot. You get into it and you get your paycheck and you lose that one, and then you think, well, I'll just double down and I'll
yeah.
make it back. And then the money's gone. And I think in this economy where income's still a developing country, it's not the not
And
not helping the country very
yeah, and
much.
it's a sad thing, especially in East Africa and West Africa, where responsible gambling is not really a thing that's spoken about, widely. It's always a taboo here.
Yeah.
Whereas in markets like the UK or in the States,
Mhm.
there's this drive around regulating gambling and gambling
Yeah. Yeah.
addiction,
Yeah. And doing it responsibly.
and doing it
Yeah.
absolutely, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, if it's your form of entertainment, then fine, go ahead. That probably beats me playing Half-Life or League of Legends,
Yeah.
right? It's the
Exactly.
same kind of thing. I may not
Sure.
be losing a lot of money there, but yeah, yeah. The point I was trying to make around our markets is that it's still a taboo thing, and there's no education, there's no awareness around this concept of responsible gambling,
Yeah.
and that's getting better. It's getting better.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Because it's like I have no moral issue against gambling. I go into Las Vegas,
yeah.
take a
It's
little
fun.
money. Yeah, do it as okay, I know how much I'm going to spend, do that. But yeah, I think as I got older, then I was like, oh man, I hate just losing my money unless I just really are wanting to go and just
And and and,
have a good time or something. But I mean, it's just yeah, it's still hard.
there's diminishing returns in the
Yeah.
entertainment factor, right? And
Right.
so your
Exactly.
reward, there's no fulfillment anymore. And I guess that's yeah. When I imagine my daughter asking that question, I was like, not
Yeah. It's
something I can answer really well.
Yeah. It's funny. I kind of had a similar experience. I worked for this company, One Acre Fund, and it's not quite similar, but I've worked with this company, One Acre Fund,
Yeah,
and what we would do is we would do fertilizer and seed loans to
yeah,
smallhold farmers. And so
yeah,
one time, my kids didn't understand what I was doing, and they would just tell everybody, my dad works with farmers. It's not like a very big thing that he's
yeah,
doing,
yeah,
which of course I come from a farming community in Texas in the U.S. And so, farming's like a big deal. Like
yeah,
they're highly respected people, but it's like, oh, he just works with farmers. Like
yeah,
I don't know what he does, but it's nothing important.
yeah, yeah.
So, but I could see having that moral uh,
Oh,
kind of
absolutely.
issue, like what do I do? What do I do for my kids to explain what I'm into? So you decided then to kind of make a transition to more of a
More of an impact thing, yeah.
impact-driven
So,
type of career, yeah.
going from casino data wrangling to, trying to find a company that does real impact in places that needs it, right? So for me, one of my philosophies is that technology is not there for technology's sake.
Yeah.
It's an enabler to solve the world's problems.
Yeah.
And in Africa, we are sort of I guess, frontier of problems that some of the developed countries have already solved.
Right.
But given our history, we have such an opportunity to solve real world problems using technology.
Sure.
And so I'd say technology is a catalyst for change in Africa.
Yeah.
And I sought out these companies. The person that one of my mentors introduced me to, the CEO of Peg Africa, who's now also my CEO in MoPhones.
Yeah.
But at Peg Africa, we were literally electrifying houses in the rural areas.
Sure. Yeah.
We were out in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Mali. I haven't ever been to Mali. When I had the opportunity to travel there, there were lots of civil conflicts, and
Yeah.
I stayed away. But
Yeah.
been to the other three countries, lived in Ghana for more than a year, and yeah, that opened my eyes to quite a different world.
How did you
Being
find it coming from South Africa? Cape Town, and was it kind of a different world to you at that point in time?
vastly
Yeah.
different. So I had spent a bit of time in Abuja and in Lagos,
Right.
understanding really that, these are cities that are super bustling,
Yeah.
and Joburg is quite one of those cities as well.
Yeah.
But going into Accra and, going from within 40 minutes on driving on the motorway, you have this, super built up city. The airport area is quite, let's call it financially positive.
Yeah.
And then, a second later, you're in this dust
In
bound
the middle of
middle
nowhere.
of nowhere, having informal markets on your left and informal settlements on your right. And there's this whole new world of strife and suffering, really, is the part where you realize, or at least I myself realized that, holy crap, I can make a real impact here.
Yeah.
I'm not so benevolent as to say, I can make the impact, but no, what I can do is use the tech to make an impact here.
Sure. You can contribute what you know how to do.
Absolutely.
Right.
So yeah, so after my first trip to Ghana, I was consulting with the company at the time,
Right.
and I was like, nope, let me move my family here. My daughter was just under a year old there, and we're like, this is the opportunity. Let's go spend time in another country, and we did, and it was really good.
Yeah. That's really nice. So you've traveled across West Africa, you're here in East Africa. How do you find the difference between the two?
Um, I'd say East Africa is somewhat more developed, especially in a sense of hustle culture. So there's nothing that beats hustle culture in Nigeria.
Yeah.
I think
They've they've
they're
they've
the
got the top of
pioneers.
the
But
market.
but Nairobi is a pretty close second,
Yeah.
as compared to, for example, Joburg or
Hmm.
Johannesburg
Yeah.
or Senegal or Ivory Coast. Like Nairobi, Kenya, or Kenya in general, I
Yeah.
find quite the entrepreneurial company space. And so, when you hear terms like Silicon Savannah, it actually does make sense.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of good tech talent here as
Yeah,
well. A good place to
absolutely.
be starting
Absolutely.
the tech companies and growing. Well, and so, but it was a pretty natural transition for you. I mean, just moving around, your wife and family, you're just, everybody's all ready to go and
Yeah,
feel comfortable with
we
it.
we had the flexibility at the time. I think, with the birth of my daughter, she's 6 years old now, by the
Yeah.
way, and we
Right.
have another 3-year-old son.
Nice.
Um, my wife was able to sort of, you know, do the parent thing while I was hustling around.
Doing the career. Yeah.
But no, we had that opportunity, and we said, okay, well, if we're going to do this, let's do it before the kids go to school. Let's do the travel then, and at some point later, when they get into a period of their lives where they need real stability, we'll move back and we'll set up home.
Yeah. And what's I find interesting when I talk to people from South Africa, there's pretty decent community of people from South Africa here in Kenya. And almost everyone I talk to, they talk about how unsafe it was, or like, man, I just saw somebody get shot on the street right in
Yeah.
front of me, and it just didn't feel safe. And of course, I've traveled down there a little bit, and I never felt that safety issue. What was your experience like growing up there? And
I've been mugged a few times.
yeah, oh gosh,
um, it's and unfortunately it happens more often than it should,
yeah,
where you have a physical altercation around crime. In other cities in the world that I've been to, petty crime is petty crime, and there's no, you're not going to be held up at knife point or gun point, where in South Africa that's the common thing that happens.
yeah,
Luckily, not I'd say in my experience, I'm still here today, so I
Yeah.
haven't been physically harmed,
Just hand
thank
over your
goodness.
money and your phone and
But yeah, I just like, hey, do you mind if I take the SIM card? Here you go. Here's my phone.
yeah.
And sometimes they're quite generous in that case, I guess. But yeah, I think in Cape Town and Joburg, there are areas where you can sort of be sort of fairly carefree, not carefree, but you
Yeah.
know,
It's easier
it's
if you're in the
easier to
touristy
maneuver.
areas. Yeah.
And some suburban areas
Yeah.
as well. So the place that I lived down or used to live in Cape Town, a place called Muizenberg, it's a surfing village, it's a
Yeah.
surfing town. We have our, general areas that you'd, go around in, but you wouldn't walk around at night.
Right.
After dark, people are rarely walking around because there's this unfortunate element.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
In Nairobi, my experience, how that differs. Actually, let me talk about Ghana
yeah,
first
sure.
because I did not witness a single moment of crime in my time in Ghana
So it's pretty
and
peaceful.
in
Yeah.
Senegal. It's really, really peaceful. There were political riots
Right.
at some point, but nothing that was petty or violent crime.
Yeah.
There was, talking to the people there, I've got a few friends there, and they've said, yeah, that's things do happen,
Right.
but they didn't in my time. And certainly in Nairobi, I've probably witnessed a theft or two, but not really anything major.
Yeah. They used to call Nairobi Nairobi.
Oh yeah?
This is when I first moved here. I don't know if the reputation is still there. I think Nairobi's still a place like definitely certain areas I wouldn't go to at nighttime.
Yeah,
Particularly being a Westerner, I wouldn't, wander around.
sure.
I had a guy come up and I was holding my phone, and luckily I have this little ring thing connected to my phone case that keeps the phone kind of connected to my hand. And the guy, I was looking at the phone over here, and he came to the car and punched me in the head and tried to grab my phone. But luckily I had that ring attachment on there, so he
Yeah,
couldn't get the phone. I had that happen a couple years ago.
shucks.
Um, and then there was a time on the street I lived on, which I lived in a pretty nice part of town. Um, but we had a string of robberies where they would come and mainly they'd get people come staying out late partying at night.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I don't usually stay out till 2 in the morning, but
Not anymore.
if you're coming home with a taxi, the taxi driver will call ahead and say, "Hey, I'm dropping this guy at this house," and the thieves would go and wait in the bushes, and then they'd hop out and
Right.
they'd come at gunpoint and then come into your house and rob everything. So that happened for some time, but that was about 10 years ago, maybe. So
Yeah.
luckily,
Oh, you've been in Nairobi for a long
I've
time, have
been
you?
there for 12 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, came here
That's awesome.
12 years ago. Yeah, it seems like a lifetime ago,
It
but
does, yeah.
yeah. So I haven't traveled so much. I mean, I've traveled to other East Africa countries.
Hmm.
So, like for instance, Rwanda is a place I've been quite a bit,
Yeah.
and it's a surprising place because it's very clean, very
Yeah.
organized. And they say in Rwanda you can go and sleep on a park bench with your money on your chest, and nobody will bother you.
Ah,
So
that's amazing.
it's a
Yeah.
very kind of I don't know how you describe it, kind of more of a police state type
Yeah.
of thing, but it's very safe, and people don't deal with crime there.
I've read comparisons of Rwanda to, or at least Kigali. I don't know about the
Yeah,
rest of Rwanda, but
right.
Kigali to Singapore,
Yeah,
in terms of how clean and
yeah, and you just don't want
sort
to
of
mess around
state-run it
there.
is. Yeah.
Well, like what happened to me is I was going through the Kigali airport one time coming back to Nairobi, and I have a fancy laptop for work, the powerful, real expensive one. And the security guards were kind of like pushing you around and like,
Hmm.
do this, take your bag out, push this there, no
Yeah.
shoes, no, they're just kind of very chaotic. And I ended up leaving the laptop there by accident. I just didn't get it in my bag and walked off without it.
Oh,
And I
shucks.
arrived back here in Nairobi. I got off the plane and I got home and like tried to unpack my laptop. I was like, oh crap, I left the laptop. I realized in the security. Now in Nairobi, if you do that, the laptop's gone.
Gone. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're not seeing it again.
Yeah.
But I sent a guy to the Kigali airport, said, "Can you go check on my laptop?" And it was right there. Oh yeah, we got your laptop. It's here. It's
Amazing.
secure. No problem.
That
You know,
is, that's an
would not
amazing
happen in
stuff.
Nairobi. In Nairobi, the laptop is gone.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. No, I think the same would happen in South Africa.
yeah. So did you see a lot of that side of corruption growing up in South Africa? I mean, what was the experience like for you? I mean, because I know South Africa's kind of a dynamic place compared. I mean, you see a lot of the history that's there, and
Yeah.
it's,
I remember very little from my childhood.
yeah,
But yeah, obviously grew up as apartheid was sort of
Kind of
coming
wrapping
to a
up.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in primary school when Mandela was freed,
Hmm.
and yeah, I think living in South Africa, I can't really remember much
Yeah.
from my
Long time
childhood.
ago, I
It's
guess. Yeah.
such a long time ago.
Yeah.
And also, my youth was not the best for my memory retention
Yeah, exactly.
as well. But yeah, like growing up in South Africa, and also during the birth of the internet,
Hmm.
there were lots of opportunities where I was like, oh my goodness, like look at what guys in California are doing, look at what guys in Australia are doing. Look at, I always wanted to get out because this is there's these better worlds in my 18-year-old mind.
Yeah.
These better worlds out there. Why am I stuck in this place which, as either too expensive to afford data,
Hmm.
which I think is a real problem in Africa, the
Right. Sure.
sidebar.
Yeah, exactly.
But and then being able to go into at that point, I think when I was 18, America had just launched their first uncapped mobile broadband, and that was like, whoa,
Yeah.
you can get uncapped.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, so just to sort of close that point out, I think now I'm very glad that I didn't leave.
Hmm.
Very glad that I stayed in South Africa because um, where I am at this point in my life right now, I want to be solving problems for Africa. Like my
Right.
vision is to be a fractional CDO or something of the sort that goes and advises startups that are solving real problems on how they can use tech as a catalyst.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and you're kind of lucky in part of the way growing up in South Africa, I assume, because even though data was expensive, probably it was one of the first places in the continent to get that type of access.
That's
Maybe
right. Yeah.
some of the North African countries maybe had some access, but when I started coming here, I think I started coming to Kenya around 2008, something like that, and the internet was terrible. I mean, you couldn't do anything
Yeah.
here. I mean, you could buy data, you could do some things, but it wasn't something that you wanted to do long term.
No.
We couldn't watch a movie, you couldn't do anything of that
No,
nature.
we were still, plugging computers together with BNC connectors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean that was a tough time back then, and particularly playing all the games that you were playing. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely doing the multiplayer online stuff was like not
There was
no
none of the
no
online. Our
opportunity, I guess.
online was our computer labs at uni.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember when I first went to university and what they called it Ethernet at the time.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
like because I came from like rural Texas where we had the dial-up, and it was
yeah.
like oh, you get Ethernet. What the heck's
What
that?
is
You
that?
plug it in,
Yeah.
it's like holy cow, I can download a song in like it takes 1 minute instead of 10.
Exactly, instead of 10, and you can download a full song and not three parts that you have to,
Yeah.
slam together.
A different world. I
I
think
know,
a
I
younger
know.
generation would have a hard time understanding the struggles that way. Yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, out of these companies you've been working for, kind of
Yeah.
what's been your favorite experience that you've had, like maybe from an impact point of view, like what have you?
I think certainly from an impact point of view, it was Peg Africa.
Yeah.
I think from there, I joined as someone to come in, and at that point in time, we had quite a sort of siloed set of departments inside of Peg. We had 4 markets. We had 3 when I joined. We were starting to um, think about our fourth. And I think starting from being able to tie data to drive business decisions
Hmm.
was the thing that I was kind of brought in to try and solve. And I think by the time I'd left there, we were well. I left because of the acquisition to Bbox, but going from trying to drive group-wide business decisions through the use of data and technology, trying to centralize a single source of truth for our ERP customer management system, to having the direction to kind of take and lead our technical due diligence and system integrations for the sale to Bbox. I think that was probably the moment, the big moment in my career where I was like, right, I've done a huge spectrum of things. previously. I've been able to apply it in a setting where, literally we are giving light to people. We are letting 40-year-old or 60-year-old men and women able to watch television for the first time. And that was when I thought about, right, this is what I want to do with my life.
Yeah,
I want to
exactly.
solve real problems.
Yeah, and I think for where I'm from in the U.S., it's hard for a lot of the people that I tell back in the U.S. these type of projects. It's hard to understand when you've grown up in an environment where you have just constant electricity the entire time.
Exactly.
And you don't have to worry about, I live in some village somewhere and how am I going to get electricity? So it's kind of cool. So the solution y'all were providing, was it like solar lights, just electric to the home? Like how'd that sort of work?
Yeah, so we at the time had we were actually selling some of MCOPA's equipment,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
were just these, the solar
electric.
lighting
Yeah.
with the battery, and we progressed to being able to sell full solar home systems, and this would comprise of one large solar panel on the roof, and it would power all the lighting in the house, up to 8 or 10 lights that that we would then install, a television. We had also started putting in fridges as well. I remember one of the stories in Cote d'Ivoire where we installed a fridge system for a person, and it was quite a large, like one of those chest freezers. And when the guy had it installed, he then put up a big screen television and he invited the whole community there to watch, I think it was one of the European Cup finals. And that was like such a cool moment because this guy was able to serve cold sodas and beers to the community. And this was, yeah, I distinctly remember that being one of the stories that switched my brain onto, like, whoa, this is cool.
Yeah.
And then there was another story where we then shifted into, not shifted, but also started looking at solar pump projects like your Davison shirt lifts that you get here, managing that through a solar panel, because you'd have these guys who have farms out there with no irrigation and no ability to power the irrigation if there was, and these solar pumps were just incredible.
Yeah, no, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, and the idea of the fridges is kind of interesting because it's something you don't really think about. Like I noticed when I moved here, when you go to a restaurant, they ask you, do you want a warm soda or a cold soda,
Yeah.
or warm beer or a cold beer? And in the U.S., the answer is just you never say regular
Warm.
room temperature. It's
Yeah,
always
yeah.
cold, the coldest you can get. I don't think I know anybody who's like, I'll take cold soda or something like
I
that.
felt with the first time I came and ordered a water in Nairobi,
Yeah.
I felt like I was taking an online quiz, man. It
Yeah.
was like, do you want a room or temp?
Yeah. Yeah.
Room temp or cold?
Yeah.
I was like, I've now learned the word for cold, which is, I'd love a Tusco, but baridi,
Or
baridi.
breedy, yeah. And what happens is we have a son that is Kenyan. We're in the process of adopting him,
Oh, wow.
um, and so he's lived with us for 10 years now. And when we go to a restaurant, so I'm American, my wife's American, our daughters are American, so they come to us and like, okay, cold,
Yeah.
breedy, and then for him it's like, oh, you want room temperature, don't you? And he's like, no, I want it
Oh, it's a
cold.
cold.
But you realize why that is because I think most people grow up in the village or even in places without
Yeah.
fridges, and it's just room temperature is what you drink, and so
Yeah.
it's all about what you're used to. I
Interesting.
think that's my take on it. It's not like one's better than the other. It's what you're familiar
It's
with.
what you drink, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. But and then we take that for granted, right?
yeah, yeah,
And bringing it back to the solar fridge story, yeah, we're seeing this community who are now able to have cold drinks. It was incredibly touching to me.
yeah. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
And then of course the food spoilage and other things that we take for granted, I guess, from coming from a developed country. Uh, yeah, just how long you can store food for and not have
yeah.
to just consume it on that day.
Yeah,
It's also kind of a nice thing.
one of the directors at Peg Africa then joined a company who was doing vaccine fridges,
Yeah, that's a huge thing.
and if those weren't, I'm not sure if they're solar powered. They were definitely solar warmed,
Hmm.
and I don't know the technical details of the product itself, but basically this allowed them to transport vaccinations, especially during the pandemic, COVID vaccinations to these rural areas where you need to have cold storage for this vaccine to live, and they were able to do that. So that was another incredibly impactful problem that Africa needs solving.
Yeah.
Just cold storage.
Right. And I think that's yeah, a lot of people just take these things for granted when they haven't spent time out in rural village. Because I spent a lot of time, visiting a lot of these rural villages, and like the lighting is a simple thing. These kids being able to do their schoolwork at night,
Absolutely.
just having that extra couple hours of light to be able to do work is just such a simple thing that most people just take for granted. Just flip on the light and
Yeah.
go. Well, that's a pretty sounds like a very impactful thing. And so you mentioned that company kind of got bought out, or
Yeah, so we sold to B-Box. It was the sort of largest sort of acquisition in the solar financing space in Africa, and the co-founders of Big Africa then met another co-founder in Cape Town as well, where I was, who had experience in building marketplaces, and then recent experience in refurbished mobile devices, and that's what started MoPhones.
sure. So you kind of that connection. It was like that company got bought out, and now the opportunity came for you to come here.
Yeah, and that opportunity, this business, MoPhones, came out of the opportunity of, right, we know how to do financing, and we know how to tie it to devices. Our other co-founder knew the marketplaces and the refurbished device space, and we were able to marry those two ideas together.
Yeah. Well, I guess MoPhones is specifically focused on phones, but are there other ideas that you're seeing out there in the marketplace of these kind of pay as you go, or
Certainly. I think the demand, or actually the market demands also laptops. I think that was one of the things that we're probably not looking at right now, but it is
potential?
the next biggest thing that people need. I think we'll concentrate on smartphones for quite a while before we tap into the others. Tablets is another idea, but I don't see much tablet market here in Nairobi.
Yeah, it's not that big, I would
Yeah,
assume.
everyone's on their laptops or their large screen phones.
Yeah, and I guess a laptop's a little bit more of a complex type of, well, supply chain and
We'd have to really think about supply chain, and we'd have to really think about how to secure the device. I think that would be, yeah,
so
the
it's
thing.
super complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's pretty interesting. So you mentioned that, eventually you want to kind of look at like a fractional CTO type of opportunity
Yeah, I
to
think
help companies
that is
around,
my
around,
that's what I
long
see,
term.
in my next 20 years or so.
Yeah,
I think now is where I want to build real CTO level experience.
experience. Yeah,
I've headed up teams, I've headed up departments. The idea here is now to actually think about how I can improve on some of the qualities that I've been working on, which is one of the stories that I want to talk to you about was actually one of my CEOs in the startups that I've worked at asked me a question, and it was after he had hired me, and it really caused me to stop and think, and I couldn't answer him for a week, but I had to really go think about this. And the question he asked me was, "What are the three things you are here to do?"
yeah,
And the reason that stopped me, I was like, well, you hired me, you should know this. And no. So I took that as
trying to make
as
sure
sort
you
of
understood like what.
exactly a learning moment for me. It's like, okay, well, what is it that I'm here to do? And yeah, so my answer eventually came out to be, well, I'm good at finding the right talent, especially in markets that don't have that much exposure, like West Africa, like East Africa. I can usually find the right talent. My job that I really want to do is to take organizational goals or business vision, and turn it into somewhat of a strategic direction into how I want to lead these teams. And so one of the qualities that I'm working on right now is being able to turn chaos into clarity. I see myself as somewhat of a chaos manager. I'll tell you about the story there. But yeah, so and then the third thing is being able to then act as someone who can remove blockers and really pull everyone in the right direction.
Yeah.
One of the taglines I have, and you'll probably see it on my LinkedIn profile, is bringing people, data, and technology together.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah,
And it's pretty interesting what I found in, we have very similar roles in what we do for our work. And the one thing I learned early on is like how much profitability and cash flow and using tech to do that. Because coming from a tech background, we always think about optimizing systems
yeah.
and things that are not very business. I don't know how to explain it, but it's
That,
it's like it's
absolutely.
we're not out there like at Merrill Lynch or whatever, like
Nobody
doing investment
cares.
banking. It's like,
Yeah, nobody cares about your Kubernetes cluster.
yeah, exactly. And that's what you realize like right away is that at the end of the day, you're there, even in the pay as you go or most, I guess, for-profit businesses particularly, you got to have something that's sustainable that can make money that you're doing it in that type of sustainable way. And um, you can't do that if you have a dysfunctional team. You can't do that if your tech is bad.
Yeah,
So it's like bridging that gap because usually your CEO or your founders or co-founders, a lot of times they're not technical
yeah.
that so much, and they are worried about raising funds. They're worried about the metrics and the numbers and
Product
things like that.
market fit,
Yeah,
and
but they
yeah,
don't care about, okay, we're doing Kubernetes or whatever.
yeah,
They
yeah.
don't care.
No, absolutely not. And they all they care about is the $10,000 bill that you're showing them from
Yeah,
AWS, I
exactly.
guess.
And they're like, we got to get this thing down and do it now. And then
No,
but that's where the technical experience comes in, right? Where you,
absolutely.
you take that and translate and say, okay, yeah, I can save you this much money
Yeah.
by, knowing the tech side that, we know.
And I think to your point of having leaders in an organization who have, you know, you'll have many different skill sets, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
CEO might be a great people person. The CTO might be, great technical leader, or, um, the CMO, who's this
Yeah.
gregarious person,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Good.
is able to do some of those softer things. And I think as a CTO, at least in the experience that I've been trying to build, is you have to balance between your nerdiness and
Hmm.
just the inherent um,
Well, it's yeah. I mean, there's this nerdy side, right? And I think the guys that are successful at this kind of director CTO, it's able to bridge that gap between, okay, what's the head of the business really telling me, and how do I translate what I know into what needs to happen here?
yeah,
I don't know if that sort of makes sense.
yeah. So that makes a lot more sense. Yeah. And
Yeah.
what I was trying to get to earlier is you have to be able to do little bits of these, play these different
Yeah.
roles
Exactly.
in the company as well, especially in a startup stage where you're coming in as maybe employee number one and there are two co-founders, and
Yeah.
you're expected to not just know the tech and make decisions around the tech and what is needed, but you also need to understand what the business is trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And sometimes in that messy period of an early startup, I'm sure
Yeah.
you've had that experience where you go in and nobody really knows what they want to do, but there's so many ideas that need to be tested, right?
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you a story about beginning at MoPhones, where we decided that, okay, well, since we want to really understand what our product and our addressable market is, and establish product market fit, let's buy something off the shelf that can, sustain us and do some, basic customer management, maybe have a loan management system there.
Yeah.
And we tried it. We said, okay, well, let's go find a partner who can provide this. And I quickly realized, we quickly realized that putting a lot of energy and technical resources, because of me and I'd hired one person at the time, into just trying to make this thing work. This enterprise level software work
Yeah.
in an organization that
Way
barely knows
complicated.
what to do is so complicated.
Yeah.
And luckily, one of the co-founders really does know tech, and he said, "Well, let's try and do something no code."
Yeah.
And he mentioned a tool called Retool.
Hmm.
Don't know if
Yeah.
you know it.
Retool. We use
Yeah,
Retool. Yeah.
yeah. And I've got lots of stories about
Yeah. Exactly.
Retool. But this sent me down sort of, I
Yeah.
had this
Research
bugbear, like
and yeah.
research into, okay, well, let me understand this world. And um, we were using, running our business off an Excel spreadsheet at the time, but the idea was like, okay, well, how do I turn my knowledge of enterprise software or, um, uh, startup level software and put it into this thing. What does retail need? Retail needs a database. It needs API connection. So
Yeah.
probably needs an API gateway. Let me put that up. What is the database going to look like? Well, we don't know because we have all of these 3 or 4 business models that we're trying to establish. While what is a smarter way of running a spreadsheet? Well,
Right.
let's put it in Airtable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so yeah, that was
Kind of a
our
full no code platform to.
full no code platform, and that's really sustained the business for the good better part of the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the decision at the time was the right one because now we have product market fit. We're going to market. We're now able to understand, okay, these are the things that we need to architect. Now we can build a Postgres database and actually really put something that's scalable that's going to, fuel our growth. And to tie it back to our point about being able to wear many hats, it is this kind of thinking that you have to actually understand business and startup growth cycles to be able to make decisions that will not harm the business in the long term.
Yeah.
You run through funding with what I mentioned is a $10,000 AWS bill. We don't want that.
Yeah.
That's disastrous for burn rate. And
Oh
so
yeah, exactly. Well, and that's what a lot of, I think, startup CTOs, they get into trouble sometimes because um, maybe you come and hire somebody who's worked at Google or Facebook or some big company, for Meta, and they're used to this huge tech stack, best textbook way of doing things,
exactly.
right? Okay, we've got our Kubernetes cluster. We're going to use event sourcing. We're going to use all the best, microservices, the full,
yeah.
And come in from day one and they start setting all this stuff up. Okay, it's complicated. $10,000 AWS bill. Of course, you're on AWS, the most expensive provider. You've got you set up all the stuff and then you can't get it to work. You need like 10 times the staff to do it.
Exactly.
And like you said, all you need is like a CRM or something to track your orders, and you need basic functionality.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when you come there, and then I don't know how much Airtable costs, but I'm sure
it's
like
a
a fraction, a small fraction
a
of
small fraction.
yeah. And so it's good to have that perspective, I think. And I even see a lot of startup companies, they say in their job descriptions, like, we won't hire somebody ex Google, ex Microsoft, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I've never worked in any of those huge companies. I mean, I've worked for big companies, but not those. But I see that sometimes, they like, even behind the scenes, we talked with an executive recruiter, and that's what he was saying is like, um, there's these like unspoken things that recruiters are looking for, and sometimes it might be we don't want anybody who's worked at one of these big companies before for a startup. And then some they do want those guys.
What are some of the funny moments that you've had with talking to these executive recruiters?
I wouldn't say it's this is, but there's interesting things. I mean, just the things that people reveal in interviews, I think, was kind of fascinating. Just start talking or getting references on somebody, and it's like, yeah, this guy's great, except as long as he's not drinking, that's then he's a different person, like a lot of things get revealed, and that how I think the most interesting thing I saw is it's about building trust in the community, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's kind of like you're sitting here and you're able to talk about the things you've done. Here's when you're talking about in the future, doing fractional CTO type of stuff, you have the past to prove it. I worked here. I've done this project. I've done this. I've worked in hardware. I've worked in system administration. I've done data. I've done this. And you have the background to prove it, and you're comfortable going out and speaking about it, talking about, okay, here's the problems I've solved, and that's what a lot of companies, they're that level of trust that you're publicly out there and say, hey, I know what I'm talking about. Open book. Let's discuss it and try to solve the problems. At the same time, knowing that you're not perfect and you don't know everything. There's still a lot to be learned, but it's like,
always. I think some of the funny moments I've had with recruitment firms, because going through, I think that's what's built my skill in being able to recruit top talent myself and find them. Like it's not an easy thing to do, and working with some of these guys, you'll see stories of like, all right, let me, you gotta have AI, cursor experience and 7 years of cursor experience.
Yeah,
something
exactly.
like
It's
that.
only been around for like 2 years.
God damn it, man. There was this new framework that had come out. I forget the name, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was also like, 10 years
Yeah.
experience
And
in
it's like hasn't
React,
been,
and you're
yeah,
like,
hasn't been around.
whoa,
Yeah.
React doesn't,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so what I wanted to say about the recruitment side of things, you mentioned, yeah, we're just going to make sure that you don't drink it on the job, but there's so much more to that, right? And I'm sure you've experienced this in hiring people yourself, like
Yeah.
the skills are something that can be taught.
Right.
I, as a self-taught person, can
Sure.
understand that there's a learning process. You walk into a company, you may know, Python, you may know Node, and you go there, and it'll be a completely different
Yeah.
implementation of what you're used to, right?
Yeah. New language. You just got to start over. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think skills for me is probably something that I value less in terms of things. Obviously, you got to have the right, at least some idea of what you're doing.
Right.
But I think the most important thing is having sort of an initial coffee and just seeing how what the culture is.
Hmm.
Like, what does this person value? And so some of my first interview questions are not, tell me a bit about yourself. I'd be like, well, what drives you?
Yeah.
What is the thing that gets you up in the morning, kind of thing?
Yeah. And
Because
people are pretty honest. You see crazy answers sometimes.
absolutely, absolutely. And I've had many stories like where, some people, most developers don't want to get up until like 10 a.m. because they've been gaming the night before.
Yeah.
But I had this one person who, it was a data analyst who I hired, and they get up at 4 in the morning.
Mhm.
And the reason is they want to go for a run on the beach
Yeah.
before, and that apparently gets them into this mental cycle of being able to, think properly. And their value was, I want to really be an analytical person, and my brain works the best after I've done some form of physical
Yeah.
exercise. And so I think, yeah, the part of the hiring process really needs to get that human feel and culture
Sure.
feel, because I think that's what matters at the end.
Yeah, and particularly now with AI, recruiting technical stuff, we used to do like a take-home exercise, kind of at the
Yes.
end of the process,
Yeah.
kind of see does this person have, some technical skills, and nowadays it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. You have to kind of even do more live and in-person stuff, even
Yeah.
more so now. I mean, of course, then you have to have that personal, yeah, I value those type of questions a lot
Yeah.
because you can really see something. And the last executive recruiter we had on here, we talked to, he was mentioning it's kind of like they do like therapy sessions,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of like tell us about your mother, tell us about, and kind of really get people to become vulnerable and break down to
Yeah.
see like what's this person really made of, and
Yeah.
who are they at the core, which is an interesting process. I thought because I've never really quite done that. I don't go into
I
like
don't think I've gone to that level.
no,
No.
no, but
I
that's
think the most vulnerable question I've asked is, what is the favorite football team you support?
yeah. And if they
And
say
then
the
you get
wrong
like,
one, it's a
ooh, I better not
no,
say the
that's not
wrong
going
one.
to
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's super interesting. Like
Yeah.
going into
Yeah.
such a deep level of
Yeah.
vulnerability is,
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I find that quite strange.
well, it was interesting, and of course they're recruiting like very high level executives, and I think they're
Yes.
trying to see like, how is this person going to react under maybe get to the core of who they are and what's the pressure that's there, and
Yeah.
it's an interesting thought process. But what I found slightly challenging hiring here in East Africa is, like you mentioned, you need a certain level of experience, maybe with certain languages, or you need
Yeah.
you need a certain level of experience, and a lot of these technologies have just recently started coming to East Africa. I
Yes.
mean, things have been growing super rapidly,
Yeah.
but it's not like in the U.S. where, I was studying Java in the '90s,
Yeah.
um, 20 years experience working on it. Well, a lot of the guys here, super smart, you know, uh, really talented, but you know, that level of exposure hasn't been there necessarily.
Indeed. Indeed.
And so, finding that level of like super senior candidate is like really sometimes kind of a challenge just because of the kind of the historical context of when everybody started actually getting access. And now
Yeah.
with YouTube and everything, I've like I said, if you want a problem solve, you know how to think, okay, whatever language you're working in or whatever, just okay.
I think that is, you hit
It's
the nail on the head. That
yeah,
ability to critically
yeah,
think and ask
yeah,
yourself, well, what do I need to know in order
yeah,
to solve this problem?
yeah,
I think is super key because, yeah, you could come in and you're like, okay, well, we're running a Next.js Tailwind SHAD CN setup, for example. I'm not saying we do, but
right, yeah,
that's come in, and this person is coming from the rural area and he has no clue what TypeScript is.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, well, he understands JavaScript, he understands, maybe a bit of Node, which is the older one. And yeah, they can do the job. They don't have the 3 years of experience. So I think I'd like to ask you the question, like in terms of using recruiting partners, how do you like set up these job descriptions?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think we usually look at a baseline of like, okay, here's certain skills that we would like. And
Yeah.
like I said, it's,
Yeah, you don't want to be talking to 18,000 people who
yeah,
have all the skills that,
because
yeah,
usually, in my experience, we get like 500 CVs for one job, like if
yeah,
it's a regular
yeah,
software engineer. So usually we have that ability to say if we're looking for like Node.js, okay, do you have like 3 years at least
yeah,
in Node.js ideally, right? I don't want
yeah,
to, if I got to pick from 500 people, I mean, this guy over here who does PHP the full time may be like 10 times smarter, more qualified.
absolutely.
But if they don't have the keywords, I think that's a critical thing, right? Because you have like 5 seconds to look at the CV initially.
Exactly.
So that's one thing, and then using those partners. But then that's also kind of a problem because if you say, okay, I want Node.js. Sometimes the recruiters, they don't know
No,
really what that is. So
no, exactly.
they just are looking at the CVs and okay, here's a guy Node.js,
No,
and so you have to filter through a lot of that kind of
yeah,
mess. So yeah, I think it comes down to that personal side as well because I mean, you can't really judge somebody like I said. This guy over here is PHP.
yeah,
10 years experience, architect level. This guy's over here, 3 years Node.js, and you're
yeah,
looking for a Node.js guy. Which one of these guys do you really want? You have to be able to get that personal side and find out what drives them,
exactly.
what's their capacity to learn, what's their ability to problem solve, do a lot of problem solving type of scenarios,
Yeah.
system design. Tell me how you go about designing this system,
Exactly. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, so to your point, like, having a lot of these application tracking systems
Mhm.
or, partners use these tags of the language and,
Mhm.
yeah, Laravel or
Mhm.
React or
Yeah.
things like that. But I've in the last 5 years found something that really works, which is, a 3-question screening email.
Yeah.
You just fire that off to the person and
Mhm.
you don't have to look at the CV.
Yeah.
You go through. It's made a lot easier now with natural language processing and AI, where you can
Yeah.
just feed the responses and
Yeah.
do a sentiment analysis of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in 5 years ago, you'd have it in a spreadsheet, the responses in the spreadsheet, and decide, okay, well, these are the things that actually matter to me.
Mhm.
An example question would be like, um, what was the biggest problem you solved that you're proud of,
Yeah.
right? And so you'll notice from these guys, like somebody will say, oh, I moved from Python to JavaScript,
Mhm.
or someone would say, no, I managed to, know, make sure that 3 of our developers didn't leave. And
Mhm.
that's the kind of person you want because,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? The person
Because
who's transcribed Python into JavaScript is not really the problem
yeah, they
solver
could
guy
do that
who,
with AI,
ex
pretty easily. Yeah.
exactly. You want the guy who's like, oh, he understands that people retention is an important thing
Mhm.
and make sure that that's the thing that he solves. So yeah, I find pre-screening emails something that
Yeah.
works for me really well.
But yeah, it's definitely a tricky thing for sure. Recruiting is it's a difficult part of the business, I would say,
Totally.
or part of the role because finding the right person and is always a hard thing. And particularly if you're looking for that super senior level type of person or something like that, ensuring you get the right one is always super tricky.
Yeah,
And
indeed.
yeah. And then what's your kind of feeling on all the AI tools that are coming out now? Like how is that? I guess I call it vibe coding now or
Um, I want to kind of make an analogy here, where and you'd probably know it's from coming from a rural area as
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
Um, I think programmers with AI will outlive programmers that do not
yeah,
adopt AI.
for sure. Yeah.
Very much like farmers with tractors is way more productive than a farmer without a tractor.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So I think that's the kind of analogy I wanna play and the picture I want to build. I think vibe coding in itself is great for prototyping and getting something out there. I think a mistake a lot of people make is, this old adage of build it and they will come.
Yeah.
No, you got to find your customers and your market first before
Mhm.
you build anything.
Yeah,
And I think that's where vibe coding has a place.
sure.
standing up a little landing page or a static site to show, hey, this is what the product is supposed to be about. And then using that as a baseline of what to build off of. Where we're trying to use AI is in pair programming. So we're trying to build our own kind of we're not building our own programmer. We're using one of the open source tools, putting in our own system prompts, and using it as pair programming. And so what it does is it 10x's the developer. We don't do any. We're not employing anyone for SRE. We're using AI for that. And it's I remember back in the days of site reliability, you'd have these scripts that ran, and you had these modules that define the scripts that ran, and that's, I think, exactly what AI is brilliant for, is being able to take this package, have an agentic remote agent that then does all of these scripting for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a new world out there for sure. And like you said, you have to keep up with it and be sure that you stay on top of every little detail that's happening, because you'll get left behind pretty quickly. Don't take advantage of it. And I could see, like you mentioned, maybe, okay, MoPhones is getting started, you need a CRM, you need something like to prototype quickly. Like, that can be really helpful to get something set up quickly.
Absolutely.
When you're not at the place where you need to scale like crazy. That's the problem that I kind of, within with SafeBoat as a company, is we have a ton of users, have a lot of driver data. And so like, I mean, we use it quite. I mean, you have to use it. I mean, it's your productivity is like really 10x, like you said. But you have to be more nuanced about it to kind of get to that deeper level. Really prompt it very well. Have a lot of context in terms of exactly what you expect and what you don't expect, because it kind of goes to that baseline like prototype model, and you need to go a little bit deeper to enhance your performance.
And there's a security element to that, because if you're prototyping, you don't really care, right? Who knows what, who's getting trained on which data. But as soon as you want to build something that has sort of business value, like, for example, an AI customer service agent or an AI-driven search knowledge base in the company, those are the things you want to really, put your proprietary data and your intellectual property on a local model that you need to run, and that then comes with a different set of problems. With like, how do you run this 235 billion parameter model?
Yeah, exactly. It's super crazy. Well, I mean,
we're living in interesting times.
Interesting time. Well, I mean, you obviously have a lot of experience and exposure. One thing I picked up on, I wanted to kind of circle back to real quickly, is you mentioned kind of disasters happening, and like your role, like how you had
being a chaos manager.
Chaos manager. Like, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper there and see like what kind of crazy chaoses have you dealt with?
That's an interesting one. So it was one of my enterprise companies that I was working at. It was a logistics company that were running SAP, one of the ERPs at the time, and at that point in time, I was doing consulting for their live data. So they streamed IoT data from the vehicles that were out, and there was 100 server data center that we were running just for the IoT data collection. And unfortunately, this was one of the mistakes that one of our building had, where the data center that we were running was in a fireproofed area. The fireproofing was water. And so the fire alarm went off. Water flooded the server room, and this it was such an insane moment.
I mean, usually the racks are up a little bit, right? But
I mean, that doesn't help when
it's coming from the
you
ceiling.
don't know it's coming from the ceiling. The floor flooding doesn't matter, because obviously you have the raised floor, blah blah blah, but that doesn't matter because it's all raining down on the server racks.
And I'm sure a lot of the electrical and cables,
networking, cabling, everything just shorted out. Basically, we were dead in the water. Right. And we had this live data that was supposed to be coming in, that analysts were then deciding on, okay, which vehicles to bring in for refilling and so on and so forth. Anyway, it was the longest period I've ever been awake for, and functional. I've been awake and non-functional before, but I think we had this 36 hour time to recovery, and the long and short of it is, I was heading up the data team. the data collection team, there was the data analytics team, there was the IT guys, the DevOps guys, and the engineering guys, and then these, executives shouting and trying to figure out like what the hell's going on, when are we going to be up again? We have no idea what's going on, right? And um, the opportunity I saw that was happening as we were, everyone was deep in their thing, trying to do the part that they knew how, um, um, and what I saw was missing was nobody was communicating to the execs who were shouting.
Right.
There's no idea of what was going on. Everyone knew
With their
what they
head
were
down, just trying
doing,
to fix it. Yeah.
dead down trying to fix it. And this is like now on day 2 of the the whole disaster.
Yeah.
Like we had now flown international people over to try and see what the problem is. And yeah, eventually I was like, right, no one's communicating. Let me step out of it. My team had an idea of what they were doing, and I could trust that they were doing their part. I was like, okay, well, let me step up. Let me go talk to the SRE guys, the DevOps guys. Let me go talk to the server guys and figure out what's going on. And yeah, I think in that moment I had turned chaos into sort of clarity, and really figured out that, right, what people need to know is, a, what is the problem, the extent of the problem, the extent of the damage, what is the expected time to resolution, what are the backup options that we have, what can we do that's not reliant on this data center. And I think that was really appreciated by the leaders in that company. I managed to get a promotion into like a leadership position, not just in my team, but then now leading that all the teams are responsible in that data center, for that data center. But yeah, the lesson that I want to take, that I would like audience to take away from this is, take a moment to step out of the noise and the weeds a bit, see the forest for the trees. I think having that ability to do systems thinking and see, oh, there's a gap here that's not being fulfilled. I think if there's anything that you take away from this conversation, it's really, take a look from a bird's eye view, see where the gaps are, be able to identify those gaps, and then, action on what needs to be done.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that role of communication you spoke about as well. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of guys miss, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of your junior engineers, it it's really simple things as well. Being sure the executive knows,
Yeah.
hey, here's the plan.
Yeah.
Here's the time we're going to restore the service. Here's step A, step B, step C.
Yeah.
It's nothing complicated.
And it's okay that you don't know the exact
Yeah,
answer.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
do a thumbs suck and say, right, we'll update you as things progress, right? It's
Yeah.
all about that, just being able to say something that answers questions, because in their mind, you just got to understand your user, right? In their mind, it's like, oh my God, like this is dead. We just spent $1 billion on this, and we now need to figure, do we need to spend another $1 billion or not?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. I mean, I've been through similar situations. Maybe how did that experience like shape the way that you think about like cloud infrastructure and local data centers, and that have any impact on your thought process around
That
making technical decisions there?
That's such an interesting question. So a lot of my core principles are now cloud native.
Yeah.
I've learned that the cost implication of cloud, which is, it's really expensive,
Yeah.
but there's certainly um, a risk, an opportunity cost to the risk that you have of your own equipment, or
Yeah.
even, co-location equipment.
Yeah.
The people cost as well, in having to maintain these, systems administrators, systems engineers, um, you know even having, we used to have this concept, I don't think it exists anymore, of a database sysadmin.
Yeah.
you know Being able to really tune a SQL Server 2005
Yeah.
database, to be able to run, tens of millions of records. I don't think that exists anymore with cloud computing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a skill that is much less needed, I guess. And then when you find those people, they're probably quite expensive resources because they're
Yeah,
so specialized to do that nowadays.
absolutely.
I mean, it's something that's sort of needed, but it's like yeah, the internals of the managed databases and everything, it handles so much for you that
Absolutely.
you can get by with like less knowledge for sure.
Yeah, and I think that that's important for, especially in startup industry, right?
Yeah.
So you start off with something super small,
Mhm.
and it could be, yeah, cloud computing is now amazing, and you could stand up for like $6 a month a
Yeah.
little VPS that can run your entire company,
Yeah.
at least for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And when you get to real scale, you can then transport that, image of the VPS into another location
Right.
that has perhaps auto scaling on it, that you
Mhm.
can now, if you run into Black Friday events or Cyber Monday events, that you can actually, start up that infrastructure using, Terraform or something,
Yeah.
really cool, which AI can now actually help you with.
Mhm.
I think that's definitely reduced the effort, and cut it short in being able to stand up these vast server farms
Sure.
at a moment's notice, and then being able to switch it off again when the traffic goes to normal.
Yeah. And then hopefully you don't have to worry about the flooding incidents and you have all the
Exactly.
backup.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough thing because sometimes in the industries I'm working with here, they're kind of regulated industries.
Yes.
Safepoint has a fintech wallet, regulated fintech wallet. And when I worked at One Acre Fund, we worked through a lot of countries, and some countries have stricter regulations, and they say, we have to have data on a physical server in country, for instance. So your primary data has to be in here.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to think through strategies to avoid doing that because
Yeah.
a lot of the data centers around, I'm sure they're fine, perfectly reliable, but I try to stay away from like those solutions and try to go cloud native as much as possible
Yeah.
because of those issues. Yeah, when I worked for the US government for a while, and I worked for the Treasury Department, Internal Revenue Service
Yeah.
for some time. And I had a job that I just had moved into. And I think it was like the first day I was on the job. And there was a lady who was responsible for running the backups on the major databases. It
Yeah.
collects all the taxes for the US, right? So it's
Yeah.
quite important to
Pretty
collect that money,
intense. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And this this poor lady, she was supposed to take the backup and she had her script run to take it and accidentally swapped the primary and the backup database. So execute this command, and I'm gonna take the backup database and make a backup onto the
Yeah.
primary.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this one's blank. Now your primary database is completely blank.
And you got
And
replication going.
and 14 terabytes of data, which
Yeah.
I don't know if that's that big, but back in the 2000s,
It was huge.
that was huge.
Yeah.
Um, and so in that situation, the government, what it does is it takes, this was back with tape backups. You
Yeah,
had
I
14
remember
terabyte
magnetic.
tape
Yeah.
backup, these slow.
You needed a rack just for that server.
Yeah, and these tapes were sent into, they had this place, West Virginia, which is very far away from like where the
Yeah.
actual servers were, in the mountains somewhere. And so it was like the secure thing. If there were bombs or whatever, this data would survive in
Super
this
secure.
vault somewhere. So of course, it's not like this instant like flip a switch and now we're back online. It's like you got to go get a secure company, go into this vault, grab the tapes. Then of course the tapes come with the delivery person, and
Yeah.
then nobody answered the door when they were delivering the tapes, so they went back
Went
to
back.
they're traveling hundreds of kilometers to take the tapes back, and you got to call them back to come again.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that was a situation. Like I said, you don't sleep. You're like on these calls with executives. You're just
It's insane.
you
Like,
got to get up and running and.
I think young people today have it really have it really good. And I think we obviously had it really good when we were young
Yeah.
because, we then had, computers and the
Yeah.
internet, and our predecessors didn't have
Yeah.
that. And so I think there's really this I kind of equate the AI revolution to the internet
Yeah,
revolution.
exactly.
I think it's that big of a deal.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so yeah, I yeah, coming back to the, being cloud native,
Mhm.
I think like gone are the days of 36-hour disaster
Yeah,
recovery plans and
sitting in cold server rooms trying to.
I'm sure some people still have that today, but
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully
Well,
they
it's a
get fewer.
specialty. There's the certain guys that are going to be sitting in the cloud server rooms and
Yeah,
then doing that job, and then guys that are programming, we don't have to worry about that type of
exactly.
thing. So
And I
yeah,
think, yeah, in a company, especially when you're starting out, the idea is that you don't try and do the things that somebody's already solved and figured
Right.
out, right? So you want to try and get something as off the shelf as quick as possible that you can stand up and yeah,
like your CRMs, your all these
absolutely.
things that somebody's already
You
fixed
don't
that
need
problem. Payments, there's a lot of
yeah, you
things that
don't need to
people fix.
build a CRM system. Those
Yeah,
exist.
yeah,
Integrate them, right?
right.
We have APIs for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, that sounds pretty good. Well,
Yeah.
I think that's about all the questions I have. Is there any other topics you want to cover while we're here? We covered quite a bit, but
I think we did cover quite a bit. It's been quite an exciting discussion,
yeah,
actually. I've enjoyed speaking with you.
yeah,
Um, no, I think just sort of in conclusion, what I really want to leave the listeners with is this idea of technology doesn't exist for technology's sake, right? It is no use building the best microservice event-driven architecture out there. It is no use building the perfect data structure and data topology that's you think should be in your data warehouse, for example, when it doesn't solve a problem.
right.
When your problems are, right, we don't even have three sources of data, there's no need for a warehouse, right?
Yeah, yeah. You just need something
Build a little
simple.
Postgres database and that's it. So I think my message is solve problems and use technology as a catalyst.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I think that's great advice, and that's the same thing I've noticed for my career as well. It's like you've got to be solving problems and hopefully doing some good for the world, like you've been doing with
Absolutely.
your current company. I mean, bringing affordable phones,
Yeah.
kind of opening up that market, pay-as-you-go products. I mean, I think there's so many interesting things you've talked about that hopefully opens up mind of a lot of our listeners to things they never thought about, and just what you can actually do with technology and kind of change the world through,
I hope so. And
through just
Africa, like I say, Africa is a frontier of problems that need solving.
Mhm.
And I think that, with the really good things that are happening in the ed tech sector and the health tech sector, technology can be a great
Oh yeah,
catalyst for
that's
those.
amazing. All right, well, great. Well, nice having you on the show, Shaheen, and yeah, we'll hopefully get to do this again sometime.
It's been amazing to be
Yeah.
here. Thank you, Scott.
Okay.